everyone. I'm Dana Susan Cruz. I am the creative director at Bellasteri Publishing, a publishing company devoted to putting a spotlight on pediatric and AYA cancers. Today's special guest for our author talk, Threads of Gold, is Christian Englert. He wrote this incredible memoir called Refined by Fire. You can find out information on how to purchase this book at bellasteri.com. His journey as a teenager with brain cancer is truly remarkable, and I cannot wait to introduce you to him. Thank you for joining us on our very first Threads of Gold. That worked. Hey, Kristen. So, thank you for joining me on our very first episode of Threads of Gold. I want to chat with you a little bit today about your memoir, Refined by Fire. And before we get into that and the writing process and all that went into that, if you don't mind, let's try to go back in time a little bit, 10 years ago. Um, where you were 10 years ago, what your life was like. I think you were just starting sophomore year of high school. So talk a little bit about your hobbies and interests and what kind of life you lived, your family, your friend group, all of that, what you were
Mhm.
doing 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, I'd like to first start out by just thanking you for having me on as we chat about the book and the writing process and all the memories. I mean, this book is a dream come true, and I definitely believe I was called to write it. And so it's just an honor to be able to sit here with you today as we look back on the book. But you had asked. About thinking back to before all the cancer happened, what life was like. I grew up with a lot of hobbies. I don't know if that was a product of being around a lot of different kids in my neighborhood. I mean, I remember anytime summer hit or the weekend hit, I was always with a friend down the street, playing football in his side yard or some sort of sport or whatever. But I just had a lot of hobbies. And um, my freshman year of high school, I started to figure out which of those hobbies meant the most to me. For example, I grew up playing baseball. I played saxophone and band in school, and then I played the drums at church. And after my freshman year of high school, I realized that the thing that was going to stick, the thing that I cared most about as far as hobbies go, or maybe gifts that I had been given that I wanted to implement in my life, was the drumming. So before the cancer hit, that was my big thing. I had been for years trying to get good enough to play drums at my church's youth group. And it was a long process and a lot of hard work, but I had some great mentors. One of them actually, he plays with the Offspring now. For anyone who knows that band, I was just texting him the other day. They're touring and coming into Dallas soon, and I'm going to try to go see him. All that to say, those mentors like him poured into me, and I really wanted to do a lot through drumming at my church and beyond. And so that's kind of where my focus was. But on the other side of things, I was in a really weird season of life. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but I grew up in this very structured Christian home. I got to watch my mom um, work at a church my entire childhood, and I was very much immersed in that community with what I would call that backstage pass. Um, and even though that was the case, and my parents had always placed a huge emphasis on the faith that we had as a family, for the first time in my life, while the drumming was kind of taking off, I was starting to experience this doubt that occurred. And it was doubt that I told no one about. And that was like this secret side of me that no one knew about. And so, again, it was just really weird because it was like outward success, inward trial. So that's kind of what things were like, before everything hit.
So when you say you were doubt and you use the word doubt, but like you were starting to question, and I think this is normal. Like you grow up, whatever you grow up in, whatever faith background or wherever you're from on the planet, when you start hitting those teenage years, it's not necessarily rebellion. It's just that you're transitioning from childhood to adulthood. So you start wondering about things and you're
Mhm.
kind of starting the process of leaving your mommy and daddy behind, and starting to form your own thoughts and own beliefs. And so you're not really an agnostic or atheist, right? You're just sort of questioning. Is that how you would phrase it? Or do you think you were becoming an atheist?
Um, well, at the time, I didn't realize that what you just described is a normal part of life. Um, I also didn't know that doubt in general, I mean, even once we grow past that time of, coming into our own beliefs, which I think is as true as anything. I think that's a very formative period that all people have to go through at some point. But um, for me, I didn't even think doubt was normal for
Mm.
anyone,
Hmm.
especially someone who I was convinced in my head that a true believer wouldn't be shaken by doubt that comes. And I was being shaken by the that was occurring. The doubt that came about wasn't part of it was me wondering about my beliefs, but the other part of it is uh when I went through when I was going through band and then entered high school, playing saxophone. This wasn't the drums. Um, I was playing saxophone and the band at high school, and I was literally among not only kids who had different beliefs, but kids who were like there were several legit pagans in the band. Like they worshipped the trees and the grass and just in all of that, and there are some more I would say out there worldviews that kids have in kind of the fine arts realm. Um, Being confronted by that and then those kids actually challenging me on my beliefs, I would say that's kind of what precipitated the doubt because their questions eventually became my own. And when that happened and those questions turned into doubt, that's when I came to the point of going, oh my gosh, like if anybody knew I was going through this, I'd be rejected. My parents would be ashamed, you know. I just didn't know. I had no idea um, that was a common thing that we all go through. We come into our own and beliefs, and um, yeah, it was just really hard time
Yeah.
internally. Like I said, things were going pretty good on the outside.
Yeah, you had an internal conflict. Yeah. So, and this reminds me of fast forward to not too far from where you were at that moment. Your mom, there's a quote in the book that really stands out, and I'm going to mess it up. So I'm indirectly quoting her when she says, God knew about this moment ahead of time. Like he knew this was going to happen to you. He was already aware of it. He was in this moment before you were even born. And I feel like in a way, everything you were going through was part of the process, part of the refining by fire process that you were about to get out of the frying pan and into the fire of your
Yeah,
life. It was very
yeah. No, I don't know if I could think of a better metaphor because that's exactly what was happening. I felt internally like things were slowly going out of control, and it just continued to increase and progress. Um, and so, um, and then eventually it launched into that um, the big trial of refining that we know.
and you weren't like eased into this fire. It was all of a sudden at the age of 15, you were taken and thrown into a fiery furnace. And It happens over and over again. I think a lot of people are unaware, and I just want to kind of throw this out that, more than 16,000 people under the age of 20 are diagnosed with cancer here in the United States every year.
Mm.
Around the world, more than 400,000 kids are diagnosed with cancer every year. And I know we call it rare, but it doesn't feel so rare when you put it into numbers like that. My son, you'll like this. My son went to Texas A&M University. And so I remember the first time I ever went to an Aggie football game at Kyle Field. And man, that place is loud and fun and it's full of people and they don't sit ever, especially the students don't sit for the whole game. But I was thinking about this last year as we were preparing for Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, that just over 100,000 people can fit in the stands at Kyle Field. And so around the world, every year, 4 Kyle Fields worth of kids are diagnosed with cancer. And you just happen to be one of them 10 years ago. So it was a shock to you. It was a shock to your parents. I'm a mom. I have a son your age. It's really hard for me to imagine what that was like for them because they were also thrown into the fire, but it wasn't like you were given a preparation and time to get ready for it. When it happens, it's in an instant. You were thrust into this world. And with you, if you don't mind sharing, that day from your perspective, what it was like when your mom told you you had to go get an MRI and told you used this word. I know this from listening to Mark Levine's podcast. She didn't want to say mass, so she said abnormality. What were your feelings in that instant, if you can remember?
Yeah, their feelings I'll never forget, that's for sure. Um, there was a lot going on that day, internally. I talk a little bit about it in the book. I had this um, long, um, the presence of this fear for a long time of cancer because I had family that dealt with it when I was a kid, and it just really um, impacted me. And so when the stuff about when we went to go see the neurologist, um, and I was having kind of this slight pain that was going down the back of my head. I mean, my hypochondria was just in overdrive. And I was literally hanging on every word he had in that appointment, hoping that where that pain in the back of my head and my fear of brain cancer seemed to be colliding, where I was um, almost convinced that here I am, I'm going to see my worst fear come true because of what's going on. Um, I hung on every word. And when he did want to get an MRI, but he was calm about it, that was kind of weird to me. It was like he was wanting to do the MRI as a precaution, but I um, I was still worried that even though he thought everything was normal, that the precautionary MRI was going to find something. So fast forward to MRI day. Again, I'm hanging on every thought, every little thing I observed in the MRI tech. As we go back, I'm looking at my mom who's there with me, and honestly, if she hadn't have been there, I don't know what I would have done. Because I was in the MRI, and I talk about it in the book, but they had stopped the MRI, and they said, "Hey, the doctor wants to go ahead and use some contrast," which I thought was weird because it was unplanned. But they gave me the
On the
contrast.
contrast is because that makes them see better what's happening.
Yeah, it like blows up the image
Yeah.
of the scan.
Whereas
Yeah,
a normal MRI is just a little smaller.
I think it's big, but not as detailed.
Okay.
So it's almost older iPhones, the screen wasn't as clear, but as iPhones have continued to progress, the screen has gotten clearer and clearer. That's how I understand it. I could be wrong, but that's
Oh,
how I
that's
understand it.
but hearing now we got to do contrast makes you think, okay, this is my worst fear is about to happen.
Yeah, yeah. And so again, I think in the book too I talk about having this little mirror in the skin where I could like see toward the back of the room. And the moment they put me back in the tube to watch or to finish the scan, I am watching that mirror like a hawk.
Mhm.
My mom doesn't know that I think anything is wrong, but again, this all part of this progression. Like I feel like something is going to be found, and now they're having to do this extra test, and that doesn't sound right. And so I'm watching that mirror, and eventually I see my mom waved out of the room, and my heart sunk.
Mhm.
And I think I describe it as my heart beating faster and faster and faster. But eventually, comes back into the room and sits down like everything is normal. So in those last few minutes of the MRI, I'm trying to convince myself, well, okay, if something were truly wrong, she wouldn't have come back in that calm. Well, what we ended up finding out is that was just a testament to my mom's. I don't know how she remained that calm, but she was able to, so that I didn't freak out. But we get off the MRI, and I'm like, everything in me is going, please don't let this be happening. Like, I've got, and so that night I had rehearsal for church. And so I was like focusing on that because I didn't want anything else to be true in that moment. What I wanted to be true that was that I was going to leave this imaging center like nothing was wrong, go to church that night and do rehearsal as usual. That's what I wanted to be true. So when we get in the hall and I'm fiddling with stuff, saying, "Mom, we gotta hurry. I'm late for rehearsal." And she stops me. She goes, "Christian, you're not going to rehearsal tonight." Um, it was like all the emotions, all the fear that I had just hit me really hard. And when she said, "Yeah, they have an abnormality in your brain," I'm like, "Abnormality? Like, what else could that mean besides tumor?" Like
Yeah,
what could that mean besides mass? I mean, I get like, our brains have neurons and stuff and nerves that maybe don't function right sometimes, but like how would they see that through an MRI?
right.
I didn't know anything about MRIs other than it was a picture of your brain. So I'm like, how, like it can't be anything other than a tumor. And so that's when I finally asked her, like, Mom, like I need, like, what do you mean by abnormality? And when she said the tumor,
Yeah,
or the mass rather.
she had no choice but to use the right terminology at that point. And you know what? Just side note, because I talk to parents of children with cancer all the time at Bellisteri. Um, is this one of the differences between being, say, a 2-year-old diagnosed with cancer and a 15-year-old diagnosed with cancer? The 2-year-old has no clue what's going on. They're just told you have to do this test and go do this and do this horrible treatment and all of that. But you are old enough to comprehend everything that's happening. So there's no sugarcoating it with you. No, don't just say abnormality, mom. What does that mean? Right? Like,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yep.
teenagers with cancer are a whole different story than small children.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly it. And I needed to know. I needed to know what was going on, even though my mom didn't even know exactly what was happening. All she was told, and we found a mass in Christian's brain. Um, I think they told her about the hydrocephalus, but the big thing was y'all need to go to the hospital now.
And hydrocephalus, that's fluid, the fluid on the brain, right?
Yes. So essentially, we have fluid on our brains that drains into our spine, and then it goes back into the brain. So it's kind of like a cycle. And the tumor was blocking that fluid from draining, and so it was just building up and building up, and and then it stays in the brain. And so that amount of fluid that was on my brain was what in that moment really concerned my doctors. We were told there were like 5 of them on the phone during that MRI trying to figure out what steps to take. Like, it was that alarming.
Yeah. It's an urgent situation, and that urgency just added to the anxiety and fear. And
Yeah,
for
yeah,
you, but also your parents, even if your parents
right.
didn't tell you, what a punch in their gut. That's your kid.
Yeah, yeah. I can't imagine what they had to have been feeling in that moment. Because also for them, like, they were approaching this as a normal day. They weren't expecting anything to be wrong. They weren't thinking through a fear possibly coming true. And while I almost think that makes the whole situation coming about harder, because for me, yes, I was hyperventilating. Yes, I was really concerned, but I had been fearing this tumor for a long time. And so it was my worst fear coming true. And I wasn't necessarily surprised, but my parents were. It's like, here's my healthy kid who I want to always be healthy, and that I will do everything in my power to keep healthy.
Hmm.
And out of the blue, we're told that he has a mass that I cannot control. I don't know how you face that as a parent.
I don't
I,
either. I don't know. And yet, so many parents have to. Again, we go back to that big number of 400,000 every year diagnosed. What a horrible talk about being thrown into a fire and not having any chance to brace yourself for it. But yeah, as a parent, um, you're the love you have for your kids is different than any other kind of love because it's a protective love. It's I'm supposed to be there to take care of them and protect them. And now suddenly my kid has something I can't do anything about. And then fast forward, and I don't want to tell everything in the book because I want people to go buy this book. I think it's a very important memoir because again, it's the perspective of a teenager, and we really need to raise awareness about what it's like for teenagers with cancer. It's life altering. But fast forward just a little bit, and they were going to discover that you didn't just have a brain cancer, you had a brain cancer that hardly anyone else in the world has, right? What's it
right.
called?
Oh gosh. So
It's
it's a
long,
decade.
say it.
It's a decade later, and I'm still trying to figure out how to pronounce the scientific terms. So it's a pineal parenchymal tumor with intermediate differentiation.
Okay,
Um,
that's
or-
one good for the pediatric oncologist to explain. Because, but now
right,
one of
right.
like how many like am I saying this right? Only a handful of people even had this kind of tumor.
Yeah, so there were 5 known cases since 2000, and that was pretty much all that was known. But I guess as for scientific purity, they collect this sample size from since 2000. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, it was 5 cases since 2000, and all of those people were middle aged. So I was the first known teen.
Oh,
Um,
do you know if there have been any since you? Teenagers?
yes, yeah, there have been more than 5 for sure, and probably more. That's the thing. It's such a rare tumor, and there's so little protocol for it that I'm sure it gets missed by doctors.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not. What we do know is, like, the other kids, some of the other kids that had it did have the symptoms of a tumor that was causing hydrocephalus. It was the vomiting, the severe headaches, the dizziness, like all of that. Some of the other kids had those symptoms.
Mhm.
I think others didn't, but it's just, again, it's a rare tumor. And even since then, like, they sent, again, not to ruin the story either, but they sent like my biopsy and uh, uh, parts of the tumor off to John Hopkins, um, and for research. Like we signed a form uh, releasing the tumor essentially to be researched, and uh, yeah. So even since then, though, there hasn't been much clarity in the research community on what the tumor is and how it reacts to treatment.
Well, some of us have spent literally decades now raising awareness and funding to develop better therapies for kids with cancer. And I mean, my husband and I just, that's a big deal to us. There isn't enough funding. And I think you and I were chatting about this just the other day. I am always I'm going to continue doing my 2 trips a year to Washington, D.C. to lobby. I do believe that our federal government can and should increase funding for pediatric cancer specifically, and brain cancers are the most lethal of them all right now. Um, but like I told you the other day, depending on the federal government alone is just not smart. It's going to require philanthropy. We need good people to put their money where their mouth is and donate to these researchers. We've got some amazing researchers in our nation who have what it takes. They have incredible, innovative talents, and I believe that they can develop better therapies and better technologies, especially for these brain cancers. DIPG is one that, is almost 100% fatal. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so unfair because it's killing little kids. Brain cancers are wretched. All cancers are wretched, but I just don't think it's fair when it attacks a child. But but again, I just feel like it's important for people to fund research. I'm glad that they have tissue from your brain to study. And I just hope that those researchers in these institutions can receive the funding that they need to keep up the good work so that someday, kids just don't get cancer at all. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah. Well, I have a friend at church. He just started dating a girl who she is a cancer researcher. So she is currently getting her, I believe it's an MD in cancer research, but she already has like her job. And I think she's been working it for a while, but she literally spends day in, day out researching. Her expertise is in like kidney related cancers, I believe. But all that to say, when things like the big beautiful bill get released or anything happens within the medical field, um, there's always a possibility that someone like her could be affected. And like you were talking about, that's where we as humans um, can engage in philanthropy. Um, and I think that's a very, very healthy and good thing to do.
Again, we
Donate.
can't put our hope and faith in the federal government.
No,
We can raise our voices and say what we want them to do. Oop, I'm sorry. Am I making a noise on you?
no, that was me. My laptop. Uh,
Oh, I'm making all kind of noises today. And like I told you, if my dog starts, I'm going to pick her up and she's going to be a part of this. But yeah, no, I definitely always tell people, listen, I believe in sending emails to our congressmen. I believe in going and sitting in their offices on Capitol Hill and letting them know why I care so much about this and that I want them to do something. But if I stopped there, I just wouldn't be doing enough. So I donate to valid research, and I'm not going to stop doing that because I think it's so important. And I don't want you to share your full story, but let's just say that you underwent some very serious treatments. I included in that a major surgery at Cook Children's Hospital. And I had the privilege of meeting your surgeon not long ago and seeing you hook up with your medical team. And that was one of my favorite days. Um, but those folks over there at Cook Children's, they're angels on earth. I mean, they're miracle workers, truly. And you are a true miracle, a testament to what they're able to do. And something that's really cool, side note, is they share your faith. Your whole book, your whole memoir really is about how, yes, you were doubting whether God was even real when all of this started. And then you got thrown into this fire. And right at the very beginning of it, even before they performed surgery on you, they're like, we're going to pray for you. Like, how cool is that? They were there to be a testament. Yeah, God is real. He's going in the OR with us, and he's got you, Kristen.
It was crazy. I had never heard of a doctor praying with their patient. I'm sure it's happened in history, but I didn't think that was. I was under the impression that wasn't even allowed. Um, and maybe it's not. I don't know.
I think
But
it's allowed. I don't think it's allowed in public school, maybe. I don't know. It is.
I don't
I
know,
think
but it was still nonetheless like my pediatrician that I had. He was very open that he was a believer growing up, so we knew he was a believer. He just never prayed with us uh, at appointments. And so when my surgeon, I mean, and you have to remember that we're about 12 hours into this whole journey, and here a guy we've never met is about to literally take a scalpel through my brain, and we're having to find a way to put trust in him. Because I mean, it'd be like if I literally walked into your house, met you, said hi, introduced myself, and said, all right, I'm performing brain surgery on you.
yeah.
Like that's what it was.
I
And
don't know you. Why are you chopping up my head?
right, like I got that it was very much needed, but it's just weird. It's like this stranger who I've known for 5 minutes is explaining how he's gonna perform it. But anyway, we get done with that, and so again, we were trying to find some way to trust him. And when he stopped and he said, "Hey, do you mind if I pray over the surgery?" That was it. We knew it, and but it was so weird. And then we go downstairs to prep for the surgery, and my anesthesiologist walks in, and he not only professes that while I'm in surgery, I become an additional kid of his, which showed my parents and me that he was taking me. I mean, he was gonna give everything for me to come out of that surgery okay. But um, he finishes all that and he goes, "So, can we pray over the surgery?" And again, it's just like, what?
Yeah.
Um, so it was very surreal. And yes, throughout the whole treatment process, I mean, I don't know a person on my medical team that's not a believer.
That's amazing.
Um, it, it's crazy.
It
Um,
is. You don't see that too often.
but
But also, I've said this so many times. I've met pediatric oncologists and nurses and people who work in pediatric oncology so many times over the years. It's a calling. You can't go into that job every day and not be super affected by it. You're with little kids who are suffering and dying. And it can't be just that anyone just does that. It has to be a calling.
yep, yep. And to your point, when we went and saw my medical team recently, we learned that my oncologist that I had during everything, he's moved on from oncology, because he's about to retire within the next few years. And he told us that day, he said, I really just want to end my career by doing something, by giving good news.
Yeah. He has to give so much bad news every day of his life, doesn't he?
Right. And but he did so faithfully for, gosh, it was, I think he said it was, he had done that for over 30 years.
Wow.
Um, and so, yeah, it takes a very special person. I couldn't do it.
No,
I would
me
just,
neither.
I couldn't do it. But I'm so thankful for people who do. I'm thankful for people like Dr. Murray, my oncologist, who, yes, he too was a believer, and he faithfully delivered hard news, and prayed for God's
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I
people.
think I met him and I met your surgeon and I met one of your PAs and a nurse, I think, right? I met
No, so you met to start. You met my nurse practitioner when I was going through everything. That's Mandy. I talk about her in the book.
You do.
And then she went back, and then Summer came out. Summer is my current nurse practitioner. So right now I'm in the Life After Cancer program at Cooks. And so she's the nurse practitioner for that program. So she, like, when I do go in and do follow up, she's the one that conducts appointments, reviews the MRI, follow up. So she's essentially my newer Mandy, but they literally work right beside each other in their office. So like Mandy trained her. Um, so it's a very unified structure, I guess you could say. But anyway, those are who you're met, and then the brain surgeon and my oncologist.
And it was really a treat for me. I'm so glad. So just to explain to anyone watching this, I got to join you there at Cook Children's so you could actually take copies of your book and hand deliver them to the members of your oncology team, which is very, very special. I hope it means a lot to them to see a life that they helped to save. And and again, I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about your book, but through this whole process, you say that your life, your faith was refined in this fire. And I've always thought this was so interesting because I did read a long time ago, and I don't want to go into all the science of it because I'd probably say it wrong, but gold is refined in fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting because gold is the color of childhood cancer awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just kind of again, these are little threads of gold that I see everywhere in my life that you were refined in this fire and your faith was almost like born afresh and new. And you came out of this fire completely transformed. Not only do you now firmly believe in God, but you um, want a career in Christian ministry, correct? And I'm probably going to get this wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you were told that you might not be able to do well in school because of all of the brain cancer and all of the therapy that you had to do, that you needed to brace yourself. You might not be able to do well in school, but wow, boy, did you do well because here you sit with a master's degree, planning on getting a doctorate, correct? And so you
Yeah, yeah,
not only did well in school, you did really well in school.
yeah. And it wasn't that my doctors saw me and thought, man, this kid really is not smart, and now we're going to treat his brain with cancer. He's ruined. It's just the impact of the drugs that I was being given. That's what chemo is. And then the surgery, and then the radiation that was going to basically, and this actually kind of did it, really hindered my processing skills. Um,
Mhm.
they said, we just, we think he will graduate high school, but we're not sure he's going to be able to handle what college will bring
Yeah.
academically. And so we're not sure he's going to be able to get through college. Um, and so we had to plan for that. I remember going, when I came out of everything, going back into uh, high school that next year and returning and doing classes, there was a huge jump, or there it was a huge adjustment, and I had to relearn how to learn again because of the effects of everything. And so, surely that year we were like, okay, maybe they're right. What is this going to look like? And then one thing led to another, and I truly believe it's because of God's strength that I have been able to go through college and handle the rigor that comes with that. Um, and and again, it's another testament how God has basically broken through every odd that I was given during treatment and because of treatment. God has just provided this strength, this rejuvenation, this resilience that I would not have if not for Him.
Yep. Yep. God is good. Very good. I've got your book with me right here. There's a portion I want to read to you, and there's a reason for my bringing this to your attention. Um, and I do want to transition to talking just a little bit about the process of writing a memoir and encourage anyone out there who's working on theirs that it can be done. Um, but a lot of people know this. A lot of people don't know this, maybe, but the reason that we started this small publishing company is both my husband and I were 7 years old when we were introduced to childhood cancer, because we both had a younger sibling who was diagnosed. So,
Mm,
sadly, my husband's sister died of her leukemia at the age of 6. My husband had just turned 8. Actually, yeah, he was 8, and it was the last day of second grade. He came home to find out that she had died, and his life will never be the same again. There's a big hole in his heart, missing his sister. Decades later, it's this, this pain is still there. Um, but he does everything that he does in memory of her. And then for me, I was coincidentally 7 years old when my little 1.5-year-old brother was diagnosed with cancer. And
mm,
it, thankfully, he's alive and well today. He's a
mm,
miracle. And I'm so thankful that he survived. And, but I know that both my husband and I know what it's like to be a child of cancer sibling. And so we have a very special place in our hearts for siblings. And I love how in your book you mention your sister, Lauren. And so I just want to read this portion because I think it's so sweet. This is chapter 4. So maybe you know which part I'm reading here. And this gives me crying feelings. It says, "There was a moment when my sister Lauren came over and hugged me. I don't remember letting go for the rest of the afternoon. She stayed by my side until it was time for her to go to bed. While I had always been aware of her love for me, that made me truly understand how much I loved her." And I love that because you acknowledge your sister in this. And we talked about your parents. Of course, it affected each of you in a very different way. You are the one with this horrible disease in your body. Your parents have something that no parent should have to suffer, hearing that their child is sick. But your sister, who is, I think, 2 or 3 years your junior, right? She's younger than you are. She is now thrust into this world. And my understanding from hearing your parents talk about her and reading about her, she is one strong young lady, who handled it with incredible bravery. Um, but it's going to affect her for the rest of her life too. There's a
mm.
special calling for her that's going to come as a result of this. Just like for my husband and me, we've learned a special calling from being the siblings of kids with cancer, that we care about them and what they have to go through. So, do you mind just sharing a little bit about your relationship with Lauren?
I'd love to. Yeah, gosh, um, initially, all I know to say is that Lauren is a blessing to our family. But within that, she has just always approached life in a unique way. She is not easily swayed um, or knocked down. When trials occur, she looks them in the eye, goes, "Okay, this is happening," and walks forward. Like that's how she approaches things. She's always been very happy, funny, just a light, just a presence of joy. Um, and so when all this occurred, we were, um, my family was definitely shaken, and I have no doubt that this affected Lauren. I think the passage you read and kind of demonstrates just how it affected her. I mean, her older brother is has this scary disease, and when that moment happened, this was the I think it was the day after I got home from the hospital from having the biopsy surgery. So we know nothing yet. We don't know whether it's cancer, anything like that. And she just came over and sat next to me and would not let go. And one of the reasons that is significant is because Lauren is not a physical touch person. She does not hug
Not her
very.
love
It
language.
is not her love language. Now she's affectionate with her boyfriend. Um, they'll hug and things like that. She's not physical touch is not a big thing for where it is for my mom and dad and I. We're all very much impacted by physical touch, and so hugs are a big thing for us. That day, she was so worried about me. She was so concerned that her aversion to physical touch was completely overcome by her love for me.
Yeah.
And ever since then, she has assumed she's my little sister. Like you said, she is my little sister, but she has assumed this role of protecting and being there for our family. Anytime a challenge happens that may cause some social problems or is hard to work through, I deal with PTSD as a result of the cancer treatment and everything. Um, and there have literally been nights where I'm brought to tears because of the PTSD. And there was one time I remember I was in such a hard place, and it was late at night. And though I was struggling with this anxiety, I didn't want to wake my parents up. It was that late at night. Now, my mom, when she hears this, she's probably going to go, Christian, why didn't you call me? Seriously, like, but because she cares. But I knew Lauren was up. And so I texted her. I said, Lo, I call her Lo. I need to talk. Like, I'm having a hard time. And immediately she calls me. She goes, let's talk. Let's get through this. I'm here for you. Do you need me to come over? I'm 5 minutes away over at DBU. We live close. Do you need me to come over? And she took me through my breathing techniques. Like, she is just, I don't know if I could have asked for a more loyal sibling, one that champions people, those around her. It extends beyond our family. That's just how she is in life. She's loyal. She protects those she loves. And I'll never forget that. And I do think too, this trial that I went through brought us closer. We've always been close, but it has given us a closeness or maybe a connection that really has transcended beyond that time. And to this day, I mean, we are thick as thieves.
Mm,
Um,
love that. Yeah, she's a great young lady and she has a special calling in her life too. I know she's going into the field of education and I obviously she's gonna be a true asset to these kids. I mean, and special ed is what she's studying. So talk about a calling. Talk about a calling on your life. Um,
and that's where that protection comes in,
yeah,
that I talk about. I mean, all throughout going to school, as a child, she would stick up for the best buddies and the kids with Down syndrome, and you best not do
yeah.
anything to them because or say anything bad about them because she was going to stick up for those kids. And even to this day, the kids that she was buddies with back in high school, she still knows them. She goes and visits them every now and then, and she just loves them. That's the only way I know how to say it. She loves those kids.
Well, that's what it requires to have that calling in your life. It has to be based in love.
Mhm.
I wouldn't understand why anyone would go into education without loving kids and wanting what's best for them. And but I want to you mentioned PTSD, and I think that's such an important piece of this. I don't know any kids who've gone through cancer treatments who don't have PTSD in some form. How could you not? It's like you were thrown into a war. I mean, not everyone wants to call it a war. A lot of people use the word journey. I kind of use both because to me, there are multiple battles when you have cancer in your home. And how could you not have PTSD? And so that leads me into wanting to talk to you just a little bit. And I know we don't have all day to talk, but to talk just briefly about your memoir and
Mhm.
writing it, because surely while you were in the process of writing this book, and you spent years off and on working on it,
Mhm.
you're conjuring up all of these memories, and it's almost like you're reliving it. So how did you, while you're writing it, how did you keep yourself from, I don't know, just going out of your mind with fear and anxiety all over again, or did those things happen to you?
Yeah, no, I definitely wasn't perfect. I mean, one of the hardest moments in the book that I can point to is the moment that my parents had set us down to tell us that they got the results and that we were about to go in and get them from the. I was going to hear them from the doctor themselves, but they were delivering the news that I had cancer. And in that moment, they were very they're trying to wrap their brains around this too, even though they have the information. I remember my mom sitting on the floor with a piece of paper and she had like a number line on it. And it was to help her describe like the scale that my tumor was on. So it was like a grade 3 is what they would call it. But
Not
in that
remember,
moment,
our brain tumors are not staged,
yes, yeah,
graded.
graded, yeah. And so they're going through that, and my dad, she had transitioned to my dad who was kind of taking us through things, and there was this moment where I had to know, and I said, Daddy, am I going to die? Well, when I wrote about that moment, over the years you go back, um, when you do a process of writing a book for 9 years, there are times where for you haven't worked on it in a while, and you need to go back and read through certain parts to connect them to what you're currently working on. So that very passage that's in the book, I described that situation. I would have to go back and read through it multiple times so that I could pick up later. And every time it virtually brought me to tears because I can't imagine what he had to face in that moment. Um, I still can't. And there were literal times where I would read through that and I would just have to stop writing for the day. I needed to go find someone to talk to, but I just couldn't write because it was that. It's one of the hardest questions, probably the hardest question I've ever asked anybody in my life. And so, yeah, the PTSD definitely plays a role. I think what has kept me going, or what kept me going, is the purpose that I was writing for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, while I didn't know what it was going to turn into, the day that I found out I was going to have my big surgery that was meant to, remove the tumor, that day I was like, I think I need to write a book about this. Now, the actions didn't come until later. I think I started writing right before my senior year of high school. But um, the purpose that I wrote for was to just share the message of God's faithfulness during life's hardest trials and also communicate the idea that He remains good and just. Even though I don't have an end all be all answer to why we face suffering, what I discovered in my trial is that um, one of the ways we can be confident in God's justness in allowing trials is that He does not allow anything to occur that He won't redeem for His glory.
Mm-hmm.
And that message that I was going to be sharing and that I've shared through the book to the world is what I was writing for. And so even in the hard times where it was hard to write, or I got writer's block, or I felt like I wasn't writing well enough, what continued to spur me on is that God never, He continued to remind me of that purpose, to share that He is just, that He can redeem, and that He is going to be glorified even through the worst trials that we have.
Yeah.
So that's what kept me going, I would say.
this whole memoir actually epitomizes everything you just said. Yes, you take us through every kind of emotion. Um, and on every page you feel this sense of somebody who truly is having their faith refined by fire and coming out the other side, maybe not with every answer like you said, but with the one who holds the answers. And I really appreciate the fact that we have like I said in the beginning of our conversation, we have a glimpse into teenage life, what it's like for a teenage boy, in fact, to have cancer. And we've got some other memoirs written by teenagers, and they're amongst my favorites. And some are by girls, and some by young men. But I think it's important for people to understand what it's like to have cancer in these different age groups. You technically fit the AYA cancer community because you were 15. We used to call it 15 to 39 back a
Mm,
long time ago because and for multiple reasons that's a vast age group. I mean, even my husband when he was diagnosed was in his 30s, and so he was a part of that AYA group too, adolescent young adult. But I think it's important to see how cancer affects people in those different age groups. I mean, it affects your ability to go to school, it affects your friendships, it affects your future. And so you're a perfect story of taking something horrible that happened and seeing it used for good. There's a verse that stands out to me from Romans. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
mm-hmm.
All things work together for good.
Yep.
That not all things are good. It doesn't say all things are good, because that's not true. There's some bad stuff, and cancer is bad, but all things work together for good. And and so I'm thankful to you for writing this book. I think there's probably a future for you in writing because you are a good writer. Um, it
Well,
was
thank you.
fun working with you because I got to personally be your editor, and we just didn't really do a lot of editing. We did more proofreading. Yes, we did some revisions as we went. That was a fun process, a lot of back and forth between us, hopping on Zoom calls and getting that out. What advice would you give to someone writing their memoir about their cancer journey?
Um, to do it, um, which initially sounds like, well, thanks. I want to do it. No, when I say to do it, sometimes you just have to open the document and start writing. Even if you know in that moment your mind's not working the best, or you're gonna hit writer's block, just open and start writing. Because even if it's a day where you write down a couple sentences and just can't go on, those couple sentences that you do write down, you can come back to.
Mhm.
And it's hard. It's I So the other thing I would say is just don't feel the need to rush through writing. Don't feel like you have to instantly have your
Mhm.
piece of gold per se in a
Perfect.
book.
Mhm.
It's a process. It was. I can't tell you how many times my book changed before it even got to your eyes. I mean, it it the book is going to change. It's going to uh, and the writing of it is a process. And so just expect that challenges will come. It's not going to be an instant thing, but this perseverance that is applied into writing a memoir about your story with cancer will surely be worth it. People will be inspired by how you faced and even interpreted and went through such a daunting disease and time in life. I guarantee you people will be inspired by it. So continue forward. I had a teacher, one of my homebound teachers, that's I talk about in the book. She always left our uh, teaching sessions where she would help me with my schoolwork. She would walk out the front door of our house and go, "Well, upward and onward,"
Mhm.
and that phrase has stuck with me forever because it encapsulates perseverance.
Yeah.
getting back up and moving on, you know. And so anyway, that's kind of also what inspired me as I continued to write.
Well, it's a really good book, and I want to thank you for letting me chat with you today. I know we talked a long time, but every time I talk to you, we just go on and on, right? I look
We get
forward
along well. That's a good thing. I think it's important to get along with your publisher and your
to get
mentor.
along with me. No,
Yeah.
I get along with everybody who signs a contract with us because you're all a part of this this little tight-knit group of childhood cancer. I always tell people, cancer is a club that you never wanted to join, but once you join it, you're in it for life, and we all are connected in some way. I've never had cancer, but I've been a sibling of a kid with cancer. Boy, was I my husband's caregiver for his 3 years of treatments. I mean, I know what it's like to love somebody with cancer. And so we're all part of this together. And I just want to thank you so much for doing this with me today, having this chat. And I look forward to all the other books that I know you're going to write in your future. You're a gifted writer. I look forward to seeing what all you accomplish. And thank you for sharing your life and your story with all of us.
Well, I can't thank you enough. You have provided such an opportunity through your publishing company for me to um, communicate or share my dream with the world. And again, I believe it's not just a dream that I have, it's a calling that God has given me. And just the opportunity to write the book and also sit here today with you and reflect on it just means the world to me. So thank you so much.
Thank you again to author Christian Englert for coming on today's very first episode of Threads of Gold. Again, you can find out how to buy his memoir, Refined by Fire, by visiting our website, ballastary.com. You will not regret reading this. Thank you for joining us today and have a wonderful day.